good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Cannabis Unlocked. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Seth Schorr. Seth, how you doing today?
I'm great, Jordan. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited to have you on to talk about the wild world of casinos and gaming and how there is potentially more overlap between that sector and the cannabis industry for going forward. So, yeah, thanks again for joining the show today.
You bet.
So maybe to kick it off, it would be great if you could give the listeners some of your personal and professional backgrounds and how you ultimately got into the gaming industry.
Sure. So I'm normally based in Las Vegas. You happen to have caught me today on vacation in Colorado, but I am based in Las Vegas, where I've operated Fifth Street Gaming for nearly 20 years. My experience in the casino industry goes back even further. I grew up working for Steve Wynn at Mirage Resorts and then Wynn Resorts. I was part of the team the first boots on the ground in Macau. So back in 2003, I've worked in Atlantic City, and then, as I said, the last 20 years in Las Vegas. So I definitely have experience in the global gaming market, but Las Vegas is my home. That's where I like to focus. And while my focus is the casino business, we also operate, bars and restaurants. I've started an incubator and I try to really encourage anything that is helpful to the Las Vegas community and economy.
Wow, that's great. So, how have you seen the casino and gaming industry change over the last several decades? I'm sure with more states allowing for casinos to come online, and then obviously with electronic gaming, that's been a massive disruptor. So, I'd love to get your thoughts on all that.
Well, sure. I mean, let's start with Las Vegas because Las Vegas evolved and has always evolved, not based on necessarily outside competition or outside pressure, but for other internal reasons. So, you say the last couple decades, and there's no question the most meaningful evolution of the holistic gambling business in my career was in the late 90s when you started to see an experience in Las Vegas that wasn't entirely focused just on gambling. How do you give people a true resort experience that, of course, includes gambling, but great restaurants, shows, golf, spas, great rooms, so on and so forth. So even in Las Vegas, we've seen the experience evolve, which I do think is relevant to where I know this conversation is going to go. How do we continue to be a tourist destination for all different types of people? Most recently, Las Vegas has evolved as a, sports mecca. In terms of, specifically gambling, certainly since 2018, when the federal restriction on sports betting, known as PASPA, was repealed, we did see a wave of online players, specifically sports books, proliferate throughout the country. I think we're at around 37 states that have sports betting. And, I think depending on what report you look at, what analysts you ask, it hasn't necessarily had a negative impact, certainly not on Las Vegas, which is a destination and an experience that one cannot recreate on their phone.
Mhm. Absolutely, that makes sense. Has it had an impact on sports betting desks in Vegas specifically?
You know, over the last couple, first of all, PASPA was repealed in June of 18,
Mhm.
and then you had COVID 18 months later. So, like, it's all when COVID made it very difficult to understand, was it sports? Was it a pandemic? And then none of us expected what happened in like 21 and 22, where there was all this government money. So we saw a huge
Right.
spike in tourism. So very hard to compare apples to apples to say when DraftKings was in every state, how did that impact Las Vegas tourism and the sports book handle that we normally see? You also have things like the schedule, right? If March Madness or if the Super Bowl, is on the wrong Sunday, or if games are at the wrong, the schedule isn't great, it really does impact visitation, or if the teams aren't the right team. So each
Yeah.
year there's a lot to compare. I think The biggest disruption, and this is irony, is where DraftKings and FanDuel, who came from outside of the traditional American sports and gaming companies, came in and certainly, disrupted things a bit. They've now been disrupted by Kalshi and Polymarket and the prediction markets. So, it's this constant disruption of the new shiny object. I guess ask me in 10 years to look back and see, how did it really all shake out? But I still think it's, too early to tell. And it really does depend on each jurisdiction. Las Vegas is different than a regional casino outside of Milwaukee, Iowa, Colorado. Las Vegas, thankfully, because of the way our tax structure our taxes are structured and the way that our government is so pro-business and the way that our local community understands that we're a town based on tourism, we still create an experience that you just simply can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, you can't get it anywhere else.
You can play a slot machine in plenty of other places, right? I mean, but that's that, like I said, at the top of this interview, the gambling experience is just one part of what now the Las Vegas experience is all about.
Yep, absolutely. And you touched on the overall ties to tourism in Vegas and the impact of the pandemic on the city. And, that has been one of the considerations, I think, for a lot of investors putting money into Vegas historically is just the cyclicality of it, even outside of pandemics, just general ties to economic cycles and how that impacts tourism. So I'm curious, how have you seen the economy in Vegas develop and try to mitigate some of that cyclicality?
Let me make sure I'm understanding the question. Has the economy tried to diversify outside of tourism?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yep.
I mean, so yes, and we have, right? So once again, because of our tax structure, it's not only a low gaming tax, but also no state tax. So,
Right.
and we are the beneficiary of the opposite policies in California. So you do see an influx of certainly individuals, but businesses coming as well. I'm a part of a group called the Vegas Tech Summit, which was started about 4 years ago, that was specifically designed to it's it's a summit once a year where we invite hundreds of people, mostly from Silicon Valley, business owners, mostly in technology, to come and see Las Vegas. But it's not like every other conference where you're on the strip. It's usually out in a neighborhood, at a beautiful golf course. Part of the tour is seeing the schools, seeing our beautiful nature, and encouraging people move your business here. Now, yeah, you're the business owner. You're probably a very wealthy person. You'll have a nice lifestyle anywhere. But think about all of your employees. The lifestyle that somebody will get in Las Vegas for a $100,000 salary versus anywhere in California is astronomically different. And so we are always trying to encourage businesses to come. As I mentioned, I started the UNLV incubator where we've tried to encourage startups, and that helps to diversify the economy as well. But our governor, Lombardo, and a few of the other his predecessors have done a good job encouraging some major companies to move to Las Vegas. We have one of the biggest data centers. We have a big battery economy in northern Nevada. So we know we don't want to be a one-trick pony, even if we are the best pony doing that trick.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Seth. And so Nevada was one of the earlier states to legalize adult use cannabis. And given Vegas's expertise in other forms of entertainment, it was naturally a place for, I think, the cannabis economy to grow early on. I believe Planet 13 is still the highest grossing dispensary in the nation. So I would love to just get your thoughts on how you've seen the Vegas cannabis industry develop over the years.
Yeah, sure. So, because of reasons, we've previously discussed, being a Nevada gaming licensee, I am prohibited for all sorts of good reasons to not, be involved directly in the cannabis industry. Of course, I have dozens of friends and associates that have, dispensaries and grow facilities, have actually created very cool technologies around testing and financial systems. And so it's been, as an entrepreneur, even though I've had to observe from a distance, it has been very cool to see whole industry pop up, virtually overnight. And the sophisticated business people that did tackle all of those different segments, of course, did it with a lot of capital, and they did it in a very professional way. Some were successful, many weren't. Let's not forget, while I can't be involved in cannabis, I do sell booze for a living. And, bars are very competitive, and just to have the privilege of being able to legally sell a vice, is not a license to just print money. It is a highly competitive landscape. And so from, what I've gathered, there's been some success, plenty of failures. And once again, I think we're still in the early days. What I can tell you also, as somebody who thinks about the Las Vegas experience and economy, a parent, a member of the community, I've seen zero downside. I can't think of anything, negative. We are also a community that has slot machines in our grocery stores and know how to manage vice, right? I mean, I think there's communities out there that don't know how to manage vice or are fearful of the unknown. And there's assumptions about what something like cannabis or a dispensary, could potentially do to the community in which it's developed. And from my experience, that's just not the case.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And how has the reaction been from the alcohol community as the cannabis industry has grown? Like, we've certainly seen friction, especially from the largest alcohol companies, as it relates to regulatory reform that's favorable to cannabis, because I think a lot of them see it as a competitor for the end customer, whereas other alcohol companies have been a little bit more forward thinking and got involved in hemp beverages. So I'm curious if there's been friction or competition or cooperation, a little bit of both.
I am not intimately familiar um, from the manufacturer side. I haven't really been spoken to the distributors, but I do know some of the largest tavern operators in the state. These are
Mm-hmm.
operators that operate some 50, some over 100 taverns. And I won't name names, but one of the largest tavern operator in Nevada has been lobbying to be able to sell hemp infused beverages as a part of its offering.
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas, business in general, is about diversity, knowing your customer, and being able to offer what the customer wants. And it does appear there is a demand for that type of beverage. Um, Personally, and what I know as a business person, I don't necessarily see it as a conflict. I think somebody that is looking for, a hemp infused beverage may or may not be looking for a different experience than someone trying to drink a beer, but also it's about that experience. People go to a sports bar not only to drink a beer or two, but to be in the environment, watching sports with great service and great food. Once again, I certainly can't speak for all of the bar operators, but if anything, I think there's potentially a bit of um, concern that they just can't participate in offering this type of beverage. And I think that that's maybe a little bit of frustration is it's better put that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you talk about access to beverages and casinos and things like that, one of the restrictions on cannabis in the early days has been not being able to have that on premise inside of casinos. So I know that's someplace that you've been working with the regulators to reform and potentially incorporate uh, that cannabis experience into the broader overall entertainment experience of Vegas. So I'd love to hear the latest updates on that and the work you've been doing on that front.
For sure. And look, it is, I think you said it right. I've just been trying to um, lubricate a conversation amongst the stakeholders, the regulators, the operators. And there's no question the current um, board members and chair and chiefs all very progressive with Las Vegas's interest in mind. But it's tricky, right? It is tricky because of the federal restrictions. And even though as recently as I think a few weeks ago in June, we started to see some changes with the federal regulation, specifically around medical, which is a
Mhm.
great step in the right direction. There still are restrictions, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's going to be a longer conversation and not as easy for the regulators to just, make a change overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, right, with rescheduling happening, potentially adult use, although still uncertainty until the ALJ hearing's done, and then with the impending November intoxicating hemp ban that may or may not get amended. It's just it's a very volatile year for the industry overall.
It, yeah, it is. I mean, the good news is there's potentially great outcomes. And so I know the regulators are paying attention. They're
Hmm.
having their own internal conversations. They're also speaking to their stakeholders. Also, from what I know, not every operator sees it the same way. I think that's a little disappointing. I'm happy to go on record saying I think that's actually a little short-sighted and foolish. If
Hmm.
the regulations weren't an issue, I believe that an operator, should be given the privilege, assuming that they get licensed and that they follow all of the internal control standards to be responsible operators. If XYZ Casino wants to be, offer a consumption lounge or even completely brand themselves as a marijuana hotel, they should be allowed, and that shouldn't concern another property that's maybe a high-end luxury property that feels that isn't good for their brand or image. They don't have to participate. And
Hmm.
so, I hope, while I definitely appreciate the regulators having their hands tied, I think it's disappointing if the operators are selfishly not, doing what's best for the greater business environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so outside of cannabis and some of the electronic gaming innovations we've been talking about, are there any other major developments happening in Vegas that you're really excited about?
Yeah, look, I think it's all about sports for us.
Yeah.
Very excited that in less than about a year and a half from now, we'll have baseball. Um, there's a very good chance, I think this will be the first time we're announcing it publicly, that my company will be managing a casino that's adjacent to the ballpark. So we're very excited
Wow.
about that. And, it's a neat opportunity to create experiences and brands around that specific sport so that, people see Las Vegas as, once again, the best place to come and watch be a visitor and watch your team, play the A's or, play the Golden Knights or the Raiders. I mean, it's just a lot more fun than going to a game in, virtually any other city. More fun, more affordable. Las Vegas definitely got a little bit of a black eye, certainly in 2025. And seeping into this year, although we've seen a correction with some of our pricing, I do think some of that was real, and some operators did go a little far, and many have since corrected. We want Las Vegas to be a place where it's affordable to come, middle America can come, you know, forget about their problems or escape their reality for a weekend in a responsible way, enjoy a game, gamble, shows, so on and so forth. So the sports adds to that experience quite a bit. There's no
Mhm.
question we will have basketball, we'll have NBA soon. There's two or three
Wow.
front runners. We'll see. We'll see who gets it.
Uh,
But I think that's the most exciting thing that we're seeing in Las Vegas.
yeah. And are there slot machines and other games inside the stadium?
There's not slot machines, so
Uh-huh.
but generally you have your casino that's adjacent, and part of
Sure.
the experience. And then with sports betting, now that sports betting even in Nevada is mostly on your mobile device, of course you can be doing in-game betting during during the game.
Yeah, makes sense. And I still haven't made it out to the Sphere yet, but everyone I know who's seen shows there just absolutely raves.
The Sphere is awesome. I mean, I can definitely say it's been the most unique and innovative development in Las Vegas, in 10 years.
Mhm.
It is amazing both from the outside and inside, and yeah, highly recommend whatever, artist you like that's playing there. It's worth a trip to check it out.
Totally. Well, Seth, thanks so much for joining the show today. This has been such a fun conversation. If folks want to learn more about you or Fifth Street Gaming, is there a good website or something you can point them to?
Yeah, for sure. You can check out fifthstreetgaming.com or sethschorr.com. And yeah, it was great. A lot of fun, Jordan. Thanks for having me. And I'll be an avid listener for future episodes.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks so much.